When we received a book from Ayn Rand in the mail, I thought, really? This is going to be awesome. One of the most famous names in the library, in the bookstore, is Ayn Rand. She's not on the phone, but I do have her picture, so I can show you. Yaron Brook is on the phone. He's the chairman of the Ayn Rand Institute. He's the host of the Yaron Brook Show, a journalist, a contributor to the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Investors Business Daily. It goes on and on. He's a debater. I love debaters. I think most people don't know how to debate. I really do. When people call up, and even the presidential candidates don't know how to debate, which is a different topic. Although we could debate the ego. That's my way of getting into the Fountainhead. So 75 years ago, the book, The Fountainhead, was published, I guess. Ayn Rand, of course, is the author. Let me put her picture on here, and then we'll say hello to Yaron Brook. Good morning, Yaron. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me on.
How's it going? Are you finding that everybody is rediscovering Anne, or like rediscovering or discovering for the first time? What are you finding?
Well, a combination of both. I think a lot of young people are discovering her for the first time. A lot of older people are rereading Ayn Rand. She's never gone out of style. So for 75 years, people have been reading The Fountainhead. It sells almost as many copies now as it did when it was a bestseller back then. It's a real publishing phenomena that to have a 75-year-old book still be as relevant and to resonate as much as The Fountainhead does, and to sell as well as it sells today.
At the risk of people knowing what The Fountainhead is about, and I don't want to assume that, so we will talk about that in just a second, but was there any issues for her regarding publishing this book?
Yeah, huge. I mean, 12 publishers turned her down, and the 13th took it, and they didn't believe in it that much, so they printed only a few copies of it. But it became an instant bestseller by word of mouth, and they quickly had to run back to the presses to print more copies because it did so well. And, of course, after that, Ayn Rand took off, and the Ayn Rand name and brand and philosophy took off. It was never completely adopted by a majority of people. That's why we're in the state that we're in today in the world. But almost everybody knows who she was and somewhat what she represents.
Now, explain what you mean by that. That's why it is the way it is in the world today.
Well, I mean, she was an advocate of individualism. She was an advocate of, and that's what the Fountainhead's about. It's about individual thinking. It's about independent thinking and having integrity and living by your word and using reason to guide your life to make your life the best that it can be. Mm-hmm. I think we live today in a world of conformism, a world of tribalism, of collectivism, of which group do you belong to, a world of identity politics on the left and on the right, a world that's very much the opposite of kind of Ayn Rand's ideal as it's presented in The Fountainhead and other books.
Well, as a debater, I wish I disagreed, because then we could debate. But I agree with everything you just said. Do you know what's a shame? I'm old enough to say I lived through the 60s. And it's a shame because in the 60s, it didn't seem like we were going in this direction. It seemed like we were going in the direction of recognizing your own talents and being a thinker for yourself.
Yeah, but Ayn Rand wrote about this in the 60s, and she said the problem with the 60s is that everybody wanted to be an individual, but they wanted to be an individual based on their emotions, based on their feelings. It was a period of the, flower children. And Ayn Rand is a big advocate for individualism. Requires reason. It requires thinking. It requires being an independent thinker. Emotions follow. Emotions will come about. But what you want to be is a thinker. You want to think for yourself, and that will result in your values guiding your life. And what she saw in the 60s is too much emotion above reason, the denigration of reason. And I think we're paying the cost today. American society is cynical, it's negative, and it's tribal. And I think those are all consequence of the loss of the idea of critical, independent thinking for yourself to guide your own life. We look for politicians to tell us how to live. We look for the group to tell us how to live, and we have professors teaching us the impotence of the human mind. Not a good recipe for success.
And there are the different jobs that are in there. I mean, there's that intense courtroom scenes. You have the journalists, you have the attorneys, you have the female a journalist in there who was in the courtroom, but who wasn't respected after that because she was a female. So it's very, very intense.
Well, in terms of females, I mean, Ayn Rand has some of the best female characters ever. I mean, thinking at the Shrugged of Dagny Taggart, who runs a railroad. This is 1957, before women had broken through the glass ceiling. Ayn Rand was already projecting women as business people, as qualified as any man. And, of course, all the characters in the Fountainhead are on a spectrum, from individualistic, individual thinkers, people of integrity, the Howard Roark, and the Dominique, who is the female character, all the way to the second-hander, the person who wants to conform and do what the group wants, do what their mother wants, do what other people want them to do, to all the way to the evil critic who is trying to manipulate the masses to attain political power. And everybody is on this spectrum between individualism to collectivism, between individualistic thinking to purely collectivistic, conformist thinking. And every character, every profession is lined up accordingly.
Oh my gosh! And you see it so much. Just using the arts, for example, when there's a new artist, musical artist, so many of them are copying that style. When you see a new visual artist, this anime art, you see a lot of people doing anime. It is interesting, and I'm guessing that's maybe what she was speaking out against. She didn't write like other writers, so whoever influenced her just influenced her, and that was it.
No. Yeah, I mean, she was influenced by the great romantic writers of the 19th century, the people who wanted to portray heroes and passion and great conflict. But she didn't write like them. They inspired her in some way, and then she had her own style and her own vision, and certainly she had her own philosophy. And her architect in the Fountainhead, builds the kind of buildings he believes in, modern buildings, new buildings, not just copying from the past. There's so much of the buildings we have today are just copies of stuff that already exists. So just boring boxes that we all live in. Her buildings, the buildings she projects in the novel, are inspirational buildings, reflecting of an independent thinker creating something new.
And this book was even referenced in the film Dirty Dancing because of some of the sexual content.
Yeah, referenced in a lot of the culture. A lot of people name this book as their favorite book. I mean, it is a very powerful book, and leaves a real, people don't forget it. People remember it, and I think it's inspired many, many creative people out there in the world.
People are listening to us frequently to hear about new books. This is an old one, 75 years old. It is called The Fountainhead. I was sent the paperback copy. If you'd like the one that was sent to me, call me. It'll be waiting for you. Yaron, before we say goodbye, I found it on Amazon. Do you want to give any other websites?
Absolutely. AynRand.org if you want to learn about her and her philosophy. AYNRAND.org.
Yes. And I just realized I've been saying her name wrong all my life. Thank you. Thank you, Yaron. Thank you for being on
My pleasure.
Okay. We will be right back.
Absolutely.
We all know the importance of good health, but we may not know the latest advances in medicine that are available to us. Monday at 9:05 a.m., Bern Perez will be our roving medical reporter to tell us about Seven Hills Gastroenterology.